What is self-awareness? Is self-awareness the same as being self-conscious? And can self-awareness spark a radical transformation in the human psyche? Self-awareness did not emerge suddenly. It developed gradually over millions of years through evolution, shaped by the survival challenges faced by our early ancestors. While some great apes can recognize themselves in a mirror, showing early signs of self-recognition, humans took this further. We began not only to see ourselves, but to think deeply about our past, our future, and our place in the world. This deeper form of self-awareness likely began as our ancestors' brains grew in size and complexity, especially during the evolution of the early human species over 2 million years ago. As these humans faced new pressures, finding food, avoiding predators, forming alliances, they needed to think beyond the moment. The ability to pause, reflect, and evaluate choices gave them a better chance of surviving and thriving. Hunting in groups, for example, required individuals to understand roles, predict others' behavior, and coordinate efforts. Tool-making demanded memory, foresight, and the ability to learn from mistakes. These activities favored minds that could look inward, anticipate outcomes, and understand not just the world, but their place within it. Over time, natural selection likely favored individuals with more advanced, self-reflective abilities, leading to the rich self-awareness we see in humans today. Self-awareness became more than just a cognitive ability. It became a foundation for human society, communication, and identity. In many ways, it was a turning point in human evolution, giving us the mental tools to become not just survivors, but meaning makers. But are we self-aware anymore? And are we evolving in the way nature intends us to? The extreme and rapid development of external technologies has created a world that is both titillating and sensational, constantly stimulating our senses and drawing attention outward. While this acceleration in innovation brings convenience and excitement, it also makes it increasingly difficult for individuals to turn inward and engage in genuine introspection. The experience of time has become compressed. Everyone seems to be in a relentless rush to achieve external goals and endless pursuit of validation, caught in a cycle of doing rather than being. Instant gratification has replaced patience, overstimulation has dulled presence, and the modern life is leaving little to no space for self-reflection. As a result, the mind is becoming fragmented under the weight of constant input. Attention is repeatedly hijacked by digital intrusions, reducing the brain's capacity for metacognition, the ability to think about one's thoughts. As people grow dependent on quick hits of reward and external feedback, they lose the habit of pausing, questioning, and examining their compulsions, tendencies, and unconscious habits. Emotional regulation weakens, and the practice of being fully present fades as the brain becomes conditioned to seek stimulation over stillness. When individuals become immersed in the crowd and its distractions, they lose touch with their authentic selves. In a world that values speed, efficiency, and visibility over contemplation, the individual risks becoming a passive participant in life, dancing according to external games like a puppet rather than being contemplative about the inner truth. The pursuit of a meaningful life becomes elusive when time for reflection is sacrificed to the demands of a constantly connected world. What remains is a fragmented self, reactive, anxious, and disconnected from a coherent inner life, navigating a world too loud to hear the subtle waves of consciousness. This begins the disintegration of the human psyche, self-awareness, and a loss of sense of humanity. Is being self-aware the same as being self-conscious? To be self-conscious is not the same as being self-aware. Self-consciousness is a mental habit we are forced to develop to fit into society. It's the constant need to see ourselves through other people's eyes, to shape a false image of who we are just to be accepted. But there are so many different people, with their filters looking at you differently, maybe judging you, seeing you according to their conditioning. How can you even create a false image? Maybe you need to create multiple images all the time. Over time, this becomes a kind of sickness, a mental trap. It makes us depend on how others perceive us, and this dependency can spiral into anxiety, overthinking, low confidence, insecurities, self-hate, and a feeling of being stuck in our heads. We end up living a false life, constantly chasing validation and approval from the outside. Self-awareness, on the other hand, is something completely different. It's not about how others see you, but about seeing yourself clearly. When you become truly aware of your inner self, you start breaking free from the mental patterns and mind games that keep you trapped. You create a space between you and your thoughts, and in that space, you become free. Nobody can manipulate you, use you, or deceive you anymore, because you can see the game, both the one inside your mind and the one playing out around you. However, modern psychology often views self-awareness as a process of self-analysis, typically involving the journaling of memories. This approach encourages us to nitpick each memory of our past, dissect past experiences, and psychoanalyze ourselves in an attempt to find solutions. While this approach may be helpful as a starting point for true self-awareness, by encouraging self-reflection and introspection, it is not effective for achieving long-term self-transformation. The process can feel extremely slow and ineffective, leading many to lose interest, especially given how transient life is. You may have more information about yourself in yourself, but no radical transformation of the self. It can sometimes result in increased self-centeredness and a tendency to live in our heads, disconnected from the outer world. Is more information about the self the same as understanding the self? Can analyzing fragments of memory ever bring wholeness to our lives? Do we believe that acquiring more information about ourself will make us better equipped to solve the problem of our minds? If the problem comes from the fragmented mind, is the answer not also shaped by it? When we gather more information and answers about ourselves through self-analysis, is that information ever final or absolute? The mind is capable of questioning even more, digging deeper, generating further insights, and giving rise to yet more questions. Is this process what we call a spiritual journey, a path toward enlightenment? Could it be that we're operating from a hunter-gatherer mindset, applying that same approach even here by constantly gathering information about ourself, hoping it will lead to self-understanding? And yet real transformation still seems to elude us. Can we dare to live in a state where we hold no assumptions, no information, no conclusions, no answers, no beliefs, no ideas, no questions, and no philosophies? This requires self-awareness, not as a method, but as attention without intention and motive. Is it possible to simply observe the self without resistance or identification? Perhaps clarity of self is not in the answer, but in seeing the self clearly, not changing it, not judging it, just watching. Can such self-awareness untangle the very knot it observes? This untangling is the essence of true meditation, a process driven by continuous, gentle awareness of the mind, much like the way you become aware of music or ambient sounds around you. Through this sustained observation over time, one then gradually moves from a state of self to no self, or from mind to no mind, allowing the knot of inner conflict to loosen on its own. To be aware of the self is like observing the one who observes. In that still moment you realize that the you, the self, is just a small wave, not the entire ocean. As you ceaselessly observe the self, as your fire of awareness of the self is continuous, self-awareness dissolves into pure awareness. You merge with the ocean. You enter a state of flow. Existence is seeking to become aware of itself through you. Let it happen. Become one. When the mind is completely clear, and we establish ourselves in pure awareness, we feel the presence of life in the here and now, and the sense of self fades away completely. There is only pure awareness, an awareness that transforms everything within you, radically and almost instantly. The longer you remain in it, the more it illuminates. And the more it illuminates, the more deeply you begin to feel and experience life. Now, how should one act in this state, given that the previous actions were driven by the self that had dreams, desires, motives, and aspirations? We must live in a world where survival requires cunning, cleverness, and the ability to outsmart others. But how are you supposed to live in such a world if you feel no true sense of self? The illumination that happens inside you does not stay within you, but starts expressing in the outside world. As with pure awareness, there is no division of inside and outside in the first place. The force of pure awareness, free from the trap of the self, when chooses action, functions through inclusivity. Now you naturally act for the long-term betterment not just of humans, but of all life forms. The personal petty dreams have transformed into a vision, desires have transformed into a purpose, aspirations have transformed into a mission. You feel everyone and everything. When you experience everyone and everything as part of one life force, is it logical to say you become the life force? Do you then attain godlike competence? And finally, bring needed transformation in society in its truest sense? This could, in turn, bring collective upliftment to society and remove the need for cunning, cleverness, dirty games, and politics. The quality of outer activity reflects the depth of a person's self-awareness. Let us grow in self-awareness and bring the needed transformation. The day was ending, and the sky in the east was full of strange and beautiful colors. Some clouds were lit up from inside, glowing like fire. Others were dark and heavy, full of lightning and silent threats. In the west, the sun had left behind a soft orange light, and one tall palm tree stood alone, still and clear against the glowing sky. A few children were laughing and running through a nearby field. Their joy was simple and loud, but it slowly faded, as someone from a distant house called out to them. One child answered with a shout, and soon the field began to empty. Lights came on in windows, and a quiet stillness slowly spread across the land. A man sat at the edge of the field, completely still. He had been walking for hours, and now, as night arrived, he simply sat and listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole being. At first his thoughts were busy. He remembered things from earlier that day, worries and plans for tomorrow. But slowly, with the deepening silence around him, something inside began to change. His mind became quiet, not forced or controlled. It simply softened, like clouds that drifted away with the wind. He watched the sky. He could still hear the last shouts of children and the sounds of nature all around him, the buzz of insects, a dog barking far away, and the faint noise of a car horn. But inside, he felt no reaction, no judgment. There was only awareness. For the first time in a long while, he saw how full of noise his life had become, not just the world around him, but the world within him. Thoughts, opinions, desires, fears, all moving endlessly, shaping every moment without him even noticing. He realized he had been carrying himself like a shadow, not really alive, only reacting, only repeating. But now, something different was happening. He saw the movement of thought, not as himself, but as something separate, something he could watch without becoming. This simple seeing was the beginning of self-awareness. He stood up and continued walking. The path took him past a quiet cemetery, full of white stones and trimmed grass. It reminded him of people lost in wars, of stories never finished. But tonight, there was no sadness, only understanding. Everything ends, everything changes. That is not something to fear, it is simply what is. He crossed a small bridge and followed the path into the open fields. The stars were sharp and bright, but clouds in the distance were flashing with silent lightning. The storm was coming, but he didn't rush. He knew this path. He had walked it many times before. But tonight, something was different. He was no longer the same person who had taken this path yesterday, or even an hour ago. Something inside had shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply. A small crack had opened in the shell of habit and illusion. Through that crack, light had entered. That was enough. True transformation, he now understood, does not begin with effort. It begins with awareness, quiet, deep, and without judgment. In that awareness, the self begins to melt. And when the self melts, something new can be born. He walked on, not searching anymore, not resisting. The storm would come, the wind would rise, but so would he, not as a name, a memory, or a role, but as awareness itself, simple and free.